and welcome to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 438, and today's date is August 11th, 2014, and the title of this episode is Ebola, Civil Unrest, Open Borders, and War as the Economy Collapses. Now, we understand the real economic indicators are showing us that the economy is continually declining. It's not getting better. We see it in real estate. We see it in retail. We see it in unemployment. We see it in many different factors. Now, of course, the government has their illusionary numbers where they're trying to keep the illusion of a recovery alive. And of course, the stock market is absolutely meaningless. This is completely fixed. The gold market is being slammed down every time gold goes up. So we can see right now the economy is not doing well, and the real indicators, the meat of it, is showing us that things are in a downturn. Now, of course, what's happening here, we have many things going on in August. We have an Ebola breakout in Africa, which is spreading. The CDC, the World Health Organization, has been warning us that this thing is out of control. It is spreading very quickly. And of course, our government officials are saying, no, don't worry. There's nothing to worry about. It's completely contained. Well, they told us a lot about things being contained before, and they really weren't. So always think the opposite of whatever our government officials are telling us. All of a sudden now, there was a teenager that was shot multiple times in Ferguson St. and now we're seeing rioting in this area. The SWAT teams have been called out, and they're expecting more civil unrest. And I wouldn't be surprised if this started to spread across the country, and this is something we need to watch. Our borders are completely open. We have illegals coming over. We have so-called terrorists, people that might be infected with Ebola coming over. Drug cartels are coming over, and of course, this is all being done for the agenda of the Obama administration. They have advertisements down in Central America telling these people to come up here, and then they're being spread across the country in 23 different states. And of course, all these states match up to the Ebola quarantine areas, which is very interesting. And then we have the provoking of war across the world. We have the Pacific area where the United States central bankers are containing China, trying to provoke China into doing something. We have Ukraine, which is completely falling apart, and the provoking has not stopped. Of course, the NATO, the U.S. is out there saying that Russia is ready to invade. That is another flashpoint. We have the Middle East, which is in complete chaos, where Congress is on vacation in the month of August, and Obama decided to bomb inside Iraq right now. And then we see it spreading throughout the other countries in the Middle East. And then we have Africa, where everything is really starting to fall apart. China's there. United States wants to bring troops into this area, and they're using terror to convince the local governments there that, yes, you need the United States in this area. Now, of course, there are sanctions that are placed on Russia, and then Russia came out and said, okay, we're not going to accept food. There's a food ban, and we can see right now that countries or the European nations are saying these sanctions by Russia are stopping the recovery of certain nations. Now, they're trying to use this to convince us that these countries were in the midst of recovering, like Greece, for instance. They're saying that Greece was about to exit the recession in 2014, but because of these new sanctions that Russia imposed, the food ban, that this is a huge stumbling block, and we don't know if Greece could really come out of this. Well, I'm going to say this. Greece was no way coming out of this recession all of a sudden out of nowhere. They are heavy in debt. Unemployment is around 27%. Youth unemployment is reaching about 60%. There is no growth whatsoever. They had to go from the IMF and look at China and sign 19 deals with China to help stir the economy. And right now, we are not seeing them exiting any type of recession. Actually, we're seeing the situation in Greece, in Cyprus, in Portugal, and Italy actually getting worse. It is not getting better. Now, Germany, on the other hand, they're saying that Russia is really hurting Germany. They were doing fine until all these sanctions. Well, that's not exactly true. The other countries in the European Union were all failing. They're all depressed, and eventually this was going to spread to the UK, to Germany, and to other countries. And this is what we're seeing. Of course, the sanctions are not helping because Germany and Russia have huge ties with businesses, and we can see right now that many companies inside Germany are feeling the pressure right now. The maker of equipment such as pressure vessels and hot water tanks for the chemical and petrochemical industries has seen a significant decline in orders in the last 6 months. And we can see that there are many other businesses that are really feeling it right now. Factory orders in June dropped the most in about 2.5 years. And if the crisis lasts any longer, there's a great danger that many of our Russian customers will turn towards countries which are not taking part in the sanctions, and this is coming from a spokesperson in Germany. So we can see right now that the sanctions are pretty much not really hurting Russia that much, but they're really hurting the European Union and they're hurting the United States. This is the boomerang effect, and now Russia is looking at the situation and saying, you know something, we need to start separating ourselves from the Western side, and we need to keep everything internal, and let's deal with the BRIC nations, our allies, and get our supplies, make deals with them, and this is exactly what is going on. Now, there was a report out there that says that the jobs that have been gaining in the U.S. since the recession pay 23% less than those lost as a result of the 18-month slump that ended in 2009. So right now, the average wage of the positions recovered through the second quarter of 2014 was $47,000 per year compared to $61,000 for those lost in 2008 through 2009. Now, we've seen this with a lot of jobs. A lot of the jobs that are laying off and those that are hiring for those same type of positions are paying less. And many people are looking at the job situation and saying, whoa, hey, all of a sudden I have to drop my salary. What's going on here? And a lot of people are having a very tough time getting jobs. They're having a tough time sending resumes out and getting a response. I know a lot of people have been doing this, and they've been getting absolutely no response whatsoever. It seems like the New York market for consultants and other positions are starting to dry up. We're having reports come in about that. And we can see right now that there are companies slated to have major layoffs coming this September and October, and we're getting close to those months. And all these layoffs that we've been seeing, all of these people are having a very difficult time getting work. Because we have to understand, if they're laying off and there's a similar job, a similar company laying off the same position, there's less of those positions out there for those people to go to. Now, there was an American Association of Individual Investors survey of its members for the week ended August 6th shows that 38.2% of them have a bearish view of the stock market for the next 6 months. That's the highest level since August 22nd, and it's up from 31.1% a week ago. They're looking at the market. People, the retail investor is getting very, very nervous. They're looking at it and they're bearish on the market. They're thinking that this thing is going to come down and come down hard. Now, we have to remember the Fed has said they will be exiting the stimulus package in October. This is their plan. And we have to remember each October, going back to 1929, we had 1929, 1987, 2008, we've had major stock market crashes during this time period. Now, the Chinese renminbi and yuan are really gaining traction as a global currency. Now, let's just review a little bit what has been done with the renminbi, because we can see it has been making huge amounts of gains, and it looks like the United States central bankers are threatened by China and Russia. So in December 2013, the renminbi overtook the euro to become the second most used currency global trade finance after the US dollar. The renminbi is one of the 10 most used currencies for payments worldwide as of February 2014. It ranks 7th, closely followed by the Swiss franc. More than 10,000 financial institutions are doing business with the renminbi, up from 900 in June of 2011. The offshore renminbi market Dim sum bonds has doubled in size each year since 2008. From just 3% in 2010, the renminbi is now used to settle 18% of China's total trade. China has currency swap agreements with at least 20 central banks, including those in Japan, South Korea, Thailand, New Zealand, Argentina, Malaysia, as well as European central banks. Renminbi deposits in Hong Kong totaled 860 billion renminbi at the end of 2013, an increase from 315 billion in 2010. Renminbi deposits account for 12% of total deposits in Hong Kong banking system, up from 1% in 2008. There are now 5 offshore renminbi centers: Hong Kong, Singapore, London, Taiwan, and Paris. So we can see this is a direct threat to the U.S. dollar, and we can see why the United States central bankers are really pushing the agenda really hard across the globe, trying to get this war started. They realize, and they know it, the dollar is finished. It is collapsing. Now, we understand there was a teenager who was killed and was shot 8 times following an altercation with a Ferguson police officer, and it turned violent overnight with reports of riots and looting, and it seems like SWAT teams have been called in to, take control of the situation, and it seems like things are really escalating right now. They're calling it civil unrest, and I wouldn't be surprised, and we have to watch this situation very carefully. I wouldn't be surprised if this starts to spread across the country. You have to remember, the president would love to declare martial law. So we have Ebola coming right now, and it's spreading across the globe. We have civil unrest in St. Louis, in Ferguson St. Louis. We have the borders wide open. I mean, this is a recipe for disaster, and we can see how this thing is really escalating and things are getting out of hand, so we're going to have to watch this very carefully here. Now, in China, it looks like they're going to start direct sales of fruit and vegetables to Russia. And again, we have to understand that Russia has placed sanctions on many different countries where they're saying we are not accepting your food right now, and they are making deals with other BRIC nations to supply the food and the goods they need. Now, China is accusing the United States of inciting tensions in the South China Sea. Now, we kind of understand this is exactly what the United States is doing. They're provoking a little bit more, and they need to do this because their whole intention, their whole mission is to get a war started, and they usually start off with just a little provoke, a little nudge, a little push, and they continually do this. It's almost like a bully, where they come off like, I don't know if you guys remember going back to the good old school days when you're in school and you see a bully push someone, the next day they push a little bit harder, the next day they push even harder, and then all of a sudden that other person lashes out and hits the bully, and then a fight continues and breaks out. This is what we're seeing right now. A little push, a little nudge, a little push, and then all of a sudden that nation lashes out. And of course, the bully says they started it, and we can see this happening right now. Chinese Foreign Minister Wang's office is instructing the U.S. to refrain from interfering in one of the matters, in particular that the Secretary Kerry spoke of at the forum, the ongoing dispute involving Beijing's claim regarding the South China Sea and those from other neighboring nations. China and the Association of Southeast Asian Nations are totally able to safeguard the peace and stability of the South China Sea. This is coming from the Chinese Foreign Ministry. Some countries outside the region are restless and stir up tensions, and even went as far to ask, might their intention to be create chaos in the region? Well, yeah, they want to create chaos, and that's the United States central bankers. By stoking the flames, Washington is further emboldening countries like the Philippines, Vietnam, to take a hardline stance against China. It is a painful reality that the Uncle Sam has left too many places in chaos after it stepped in, as what people are witnessing now in Iraq, Syria, and Libya. The agency added, the South China Sea should not be the next one. And of course, as we can see from all these nations and all the countries, China, Russia, the other BRIC nations, they realize what the United States and central bankers are doing. They are provoking and they are pushing, and they know what's coming. They understand that war is coming. Now, Russia and China They made another agreement. Russia's emergency ministry signed an agreement with Chinese counterpart on cooperation in the prevention and management of emergency situations. According to the document, the sides plan to create a joint commission on the prevention and a recovery from an emergency situation to exchange experience, information, technology in the area of protecting the population from disasters, to train staff, and to create a mechanism for cooperation reacting to emergency situations. Now, these could be any type of emergency situation. So Russia and China are coming together and sharing information. Of course, most of it will probably be coming from the United States, provoking all things in different areas. Now, Poland is getting hit with the sanctions that Russia pretty much placed on all these different countries that are providing food. Poland is asking the United States, can you buy our apples? Because Moscow put a ban on their food and they have no place to sell these apples, and they're losing quite a bit of money. So they're asking the United States, hey, can you buy these apples? We have nowhere else to sell these. And of course, the United States has not answered, or I don't know why they would want to buy these apples, because the United States has plenty of apples inside the country. Now, British food exporters feel increased pressure from Russia embargo. UK food firms said they already started feeling the brunt of the Russian import ban on some agricultural products. British businesses are warning they would lose out if the tension ratchets up to other industries. They have a lot of herring sitting at St. Petersburg. We don't know if it will go through or even it will be paid for. So right now they have a lot of food waiting to be accepted by Russia, but Russia is not accepting this food, and they don't know what to do with it, and their businesses are getting hurt by this. Another food producer, cheesemaker Belton Cheese, is also suffering from the Russian sanctions. The government may impose sanctions believing that they will impact Russia. Well, they're really hurting the UK businesses here. And we can see right now that this is a complete boomerang effect. They continually placed sanctions on Russia that actually didn't really hurt Russia that much, because a lot of the oligarchs and a lot of the government officials have removed their dollars and their investments from the Western side and brought it back to Russia, invested in China, went to Hong Kong, and it really didn't hurt them. So all these sanctions were kind of meaningless. Russia does one sanction and banning food from all these countries, and all these countries are just, they don't even know what to do at this point, and they're really hurting. So this is what we've been talking about all along, where it's really hurting the EU and the United States. And of course, these sanctions are not doing what they thought they were going to do. It's really not putting pressure on Russia. It's actually doing the opposite. It's making Russia and China and all the other nations come closer together and de-dollarize and create their own banking system and create and they're looking to sustain themselves without the Western countries. And this plan is completely backfiring. Now, Poland is getting worried, and they want to be completely separate and apart from Russia. They don't want to depend on Russia right now. So Poland is planning to construct a new canal to bypass a stretch of coastline controlled by Russia. The planned canal will link the Vistula Lagoon in the northeast of Poland with the Baltic Sea. We need to respond to the geopolitical situation. The Ukraine crisis has shown clearly that we need to rely more on ourselves and become independent of our largest neighbor. So we can see right now all countries are taking precautions. They are getting ready for war. They realize the situation is going to be ratcheted up, and eventually we will have war, and they're making preparations to be separate and apart from each one. And this is continuing and not stopping right now. Now, of course, Europe is out there, and they're complaining that the Russian sanctions are completely against the WTO rules, and Russia is out there saying, no, the sanctions imposed against EU were completely in line with the WTO rules and had been imposed for national security reasons. Countries that impose sanctions against Russia can hardly be called good partners, the minister said. And of course, I kind of agree with that. I mean, if you're placing sanctions, if someone placed sanctions on me, I would have to go and say, you know what, we need to do something because you're attacking me. And this is exactly what Russia is doing at this point. Now, it looks like Ukraine is backing off their stance of halting Russian gas transit, saying that they have to be completely independent and we don't want gas coming through here to Europe. And of course, Europe has spoken, and Ukraine said, okay, we'll let the gas pass through. Uh, Basically, what they said is the secure supply of energy through Ukraine must be maintained, the official says, and this is the translation. Sorry, Ukraine, but when Europe has to choose between you and Russia gas, the gas wins every time. Ukraine quickly got the message, and the energy minister Yuri Prodin told Bloomberg the Ukraine sanction will target Russian companies, not specific resources. Because you have to remember, Yatsenyuk was out there. They were out there saying, well, we're going to place sanctions on you. We're going to stop all gas transit through the Ukraine. And Europe says, no, you're not stopping our gas. People will freeze. We're heading into winter right now. We're not doing what you want, so you better keep that gas flowing. And of course, Ukraine went back on this. Now, it looks like Ukraine's currency is plummeting. I mean, it is imploding on itself. And we understand that Ukraine's economy is a complete disaster. All they're getting is loan atop a loan. The country is being put into debt. But don't worry. I guess the United States taxpayer will bail out Ukraine because the whole thing's completely falling apart. Now, it looks like a NATO plane arrives in Ukraine with about 4.5 million worth of military aid for Kiev troops. A massive Canadian transport plane has arrived in Kharkov carrying all of this equipment, and this is non-lethal military equipment to help Ukraine protect its eastern border against those Russian aggressionists, the ones that are coming in and ready to hit us with war. Well, Russia is not on the borders. They're not invading. The southeastern people had a referendum. They didn't want to be part of the puppet regime, and this is why they're fighting. And this equipment that they're supplying are helmets, ballistic eyewear, protective vests, first aid kits, tents, and sleeping bags. All the things the Ukrainian government couldn't supply because they're pretty much bankrupt. They can't even feed their soldiers. Now, it looks like Russia and Ukraine agree on humanitarian operation. Moscow and Kiev have agreed on a humanitarian mission under the authority of the Red Cross. We've agreed on all details with Ukrainian leadership, the foreign minister declared. He also expressed hope that Western partners won't put a spoke in the wheel and will think about the people who are badly in need of water and electricity. And this is coming from Lavrov. Well, the Western governments, the Ukraine, the puppet regime will get their instructions and they'll say no. This cannot happen. And of course they're going to try to spin this that Russia is invading, they're coming in with the Red Cross, and of course this has nothing to do with it whatsoever. Trying to get people food, the electric working again, because again, these are everyday people who just want to live in peace. And they're not terrorists, and this is even though they have an anti-terrorism force, the Ukrainian anti-terrorism force, these people are not terrorists. They're just everyday people who don't want to be a part of this puppet regime, which completely was controlled by the United States and other private Western central bank countries. It was a coup, and they understand this, and they don't want to be a part of it. Well, it looks like the EU is ready to allocate about $3.4 million for humanitarian aid to Ukraine's east, and right now, the Ukrainian National Guard is getting a squadron of drones. The Ukrainian National Guard is setting up an operational squadron of unmanned aerial vehicles come today, this Monday. We have decided, along with the National Guard Commander, Steve Poltorak, our research and trial teams on tactical drones are joining their efforts. So it looks like they're going to start droning the areas now. Now, there was a report that Russian bombers flew into United States airspace and like 10 times or something like that. And what we're seeing right now is Russia is out there saying, no, we did not fly into anyone's airspace whatsoever. This was international airspace. And if you don't believe us, you can check our radar, you can check our navigation reports, and you can see our satellite images if anyone is questioning where our bombers are. Our bombers stay in international airspace. We do not invade other countries' airspace. And of course, the United States was using this as propaganda, pushing this that Russia is continually flying and trying to maneuver inside the United States. Now, it looks like the Islamic State is spreading across the Middle East, just like they're supposed to do, because they need to create chaos in all these countries, because they need to pretty much break them apart to create this caliphate. And right now, villagers in Lebanon have fought off the Islamic State. They've entered one of the villages, and it seems like they have fought them off and pushed them back. And this is going to get worse as time goes on. You have to remember, Lebanon right now uh, is being supplied about 1,000 M16 rifles, because what's happening is the tribes in Lebanon, the tribes in Libya, the tribes in Yemen are all rising up, trying to take back their country. And of course, we have the Islamic State, which is a small group that is creating havoc and chaos in Iraq right now. And of course, as we know, Obama has bombed the area. Now, has they really hit the Islamic State, or were they hitting other tribes in that area? Because the Islamic State is pretty much controlled by the United States, Israel, the UK, and we can see right now they take instructions from there. So what they're doing is, you can see the caliphate is beginning, because what has been done? Well, they bombed the area, and now weapon supplies are coming into the Kurds. So now we have the Kurds, we have the Shiites who are fighting in their area, and we have the Islamic State, and we have the Sunni tribes. So we can see now it's all starting to maneuver, and things are starting to form right now, where each region is going to be protecting itself. And this was done on purpose to create these different regions, and it is working. Now, it looks like Maliki has lost his position, and it doesn't seem like he wants to give it up. He's making a complaint to the federal court against the president for violating the Constitution. And Maliki is out there saying that al-Abadi nomination is illegal and worthless. He says that Iraq faces a serious constitutional violation. He also says U.S. State Department took side of those violating the law. He also says that no one but him has the right to represent state, and he's saying that the security forces are in a holy battle. And right now we can see, the United States is threatening Maliki, saying, listen, you need to step down. And you have to remember, Russia was backing Maliki. Now, the next prime minister that's supposedly going into his position, is Russia still backing it, or did the United States put in a different puppet which is loyal to the United States? And this we'll have to see. Now, there are reports out there that the United States is moving from Sunni area to Sunni area, trying to create a grassroots uprising in many different areas, trying to get the Sunni people all together in all the different regions, because they want the Kurds together, they want the Sunnis together, and they want the Shiites together. And we can see this is exactly what they're doing. They are pushing the caliphate right now. Now, France is out there saying, listen, we're going to supply the Kurds with arms. France, in consultation with its EU partner, is looking at supplying arms to Iraq's Kurds to fight against the Islamic State. Now, we can see the U.S. is also sending in military weapons, but what's very interesting about this is the Obama administration has announced it will arm the militia forces of Iraqi Kurdistan to prevent the fall of the final area, and the weaponry is said to be light arms and ammunition brokered not through the Department of Defense, which supplies Baghdad and its security forces with heavy weaponry, but the Central Intelligence Agency, which is better positioned to supply the Kurdish government with Russian-made guns like AK-47s that the U.S. military does not use. So that is very interesting that they're supplying them, not going through the State Department, but through the CIA, and supplying them with Russian-made weapons. Now, they are using the propaganda, because you have to remember, Al-Qaeda was not doing the job. It was losing the shine of this deadly terrorist organization, so they needed to create something badder, 10 times worse, more vicious, and that's why they created the Islamic State. And now there are reports out there saying that, it seems like a lot of Al-Qaeda members through, in Yemen and in Africa and throughout the Middle East are all leaving their Al-Qaeda troops and joining the Islamic State, because what they're doing is now combining everything into one big terrorist organization. And of course, Baghdadi is the poster child of the new bin Laden, and we can see they're going to use this for their terror event here in the United States. And we can see this is continually building as time goes on. Now, it looks like in the Ebola situation here, China is going to assist the West in Africa. China will send disease control experts to 3 Ebola-affected West African nations to assist the fight against the deadly virus. It is the first time that China has offered assistance to foreign countries in response to a public health emergency, Wang said. And we can see they're going down there because China has a very big footprint in Africa. The Ebola has spread to Nigeria, and of course, China gets along with many of the African nations down there, so they're sending people into the area. Now, what's very interesting is that hackers hacked into Yahoo News, and they put up this fake story. Now, was it because of hackers, or did they run this too soon? Because what this story was about was that the outbreak of Ebola fever in the United States was getting worse, and it broke out in Atlanta, where 145 people were infected after a group of doctors affected with Ebola virus returned from Africa. So they're saying it is hackers, but I'm wondering if this story was pushed out too soon and they were going to use this later on in this whole entire Ebola attack that is going on right now. Now, the CDC changed its criteria for Ebola, the way it's transmitted. They changed everything on their site. So now what are they saying? Well, government officials and healthcare experts have insisted Ebola can only be spread through direct contact. Those same people have also insisted that infected people are not contagious until they show symptoms. Well, the CDC now admits those claims were false. This week, the CDC changed their information about how Ebola can spread. Now, they admitted being within 3 feet of an infected person for this particular strain, where this strain has a supposedly, allegedly, a vaccine that's being worked on, that if you are in the same room with the infected person and can allow the virus to spread from one person to another through the air. And we can see that the person who was infected may not show symptoms right away, but still could be contagious. And on their site it says, and this is from the CDC website, one casual contact is defined as being within approximately 3 feet or within the room or care area for a prolonged period of time. So we can see this is completely changing right now. Now, the World Health Organization is warning that there is no end in sight. The outbreak of Ebola virus disease in West Africa continues to evolve in alarming ways, with no immediate end in sight. 170 healthcare workers, the ones covered from head to toe in protective garments, have been infected with Ebola, and at least 81 have died. Some treatment facilities are overflowing, all beds are occupied, and patients are being turned away right now. So we can see with the borders being open right now, the illegals coming in with other diseases, and there are some African people coming across the border because they're wide open. We can see that this could spread quite quickly throughout the United States. And of course, we have civil unrest going on inside the United States with Ebola, and you can see this is a recipe for martial law, and we can see this is really starting to ramp up now. Now, the Islamic State is out there, and they've given numerous messages how they're going to attack. And right now there is a video that was released, and the Islamic State group is standing by a tank holding weapons, and their message is, our message to the entire world is that we are the soldiers of the caliphate, and we are coming for you. And you can see this is complete propaganda. They've been using this for quite a while now. They need to convince everyone that the terror that we're going to see here, the event that we're going to see here in the United States, is coming from the Islamic State. This way, the people will know exactly where to go to war. There'll be no question. Peter King is out there. He is saying that ISIS is a direct threat to America. He's saying that ISIS cannot be stopped at this time, and he believes they are coming to America. Senator Graham, Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina said, "I think of an American city in flames because of the terrorist ability to operate in Syria and Iraq. To change that threat, we have to sustain air campaign in Syria and Iraq." So now they're bringing in Syria right now. They're coming here. This is not just about Baghdad, not just about Syria. It's about our homeland. So he sees cities burning. He sees them coming here, and he thinks we need to go into Syria. Well, again, this is the end game, to get into Syria, to bring them in line with the caliphate, to have a Sunni Kurd Shiite area. And you can see this is really being played up right now. Now, to keep this agenda going and to keep it pushed out there and to keep convincing people that there are Islamic State people here in the United States, they had to arrest someone. So what happened? A suspected American militant who pledged allegiance to the Islamic State terrorist group in a chilling Twitter rant is being held without bail after his arrest at New York's Kennedy Airport. FBI agents nabbed Donald Ray Morgan, a 44-year-old ex-convict from North Carolina, on August 2nd when he returned to the U.S. after 8 months in Lebanon. So the FBI was right on this, and they knew exactly where to go to get this guy because he was tweeting about the Islamic State and terror. And we can see this is all being played up to say, yes, and of course they kept reminding us that Syria is the launching pad. They created terrorists. The Islamic State now moved into Iraq. These people will be coming back to the United States, all radicalized, joining the many groups of terror. They'll be breaking off into lone wolf groups. They're bomb makers, and we can see how this is all being played up right now and being pushed in our face. Everything is in motion. Obama made the first strike. The Islamic State has been attacked. They said if they get attacked, they will rain terror around the world on American interests, and we should see that starting to spark up in different areas right now. And of course, we have to remember this is all part of the agenda of the United States, central bankers, Israel, and UK and other Arab nations to get this entire war started, to cover up this major disaster of a collapse that is coming. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.